Yeah, beautiful. It's 5 minutes already, and I think we'll just have to proceed and then, allow for other persons to join in at their convenient time. I hope you can hear me properly. Let me let me be sure of that before I commence. Can everybody hear me? Please, I want you to drop a comment just to be sure that you can hear me. Oh, beautiful. User. Okay, your name here says user. You can hear me. Beautiful. Okay, so we'll just get right into it. My name is Bridget, and I'm the Customer Success Officer for Snag Inspector. Snag Inspector is the media arm, or should I say the media outlet of our parent company, SpaceCube Development Limited. So SpaceCube Development Limited is a construction, company. We're a turnkey construction company. We handle design all the way to build. We design, we build for you. We do your interior decorations if you want, and and all of that. We basically will just hand you the key to your property. Thank you, Innocent. Thank you, Innocent. We basically will just hand you the key to your property. But beyond that, our media outlet is a space where we basically, should I use the word challenge the status quo? We have a standard in SpaceCube Development Limited, and our standard is, we usually say our mantra is that we are the Julius Berger for the everyday people, meaning that you don't have to break a bank, to build well, to construct well, and that's what we advocate for. It's one of the reasons why we decided to, come up with a media outlet to educate the populace, about what building is about, what to look out for, how to construct effectively, and all of that. If you want to know more about the SpaceCube Development Limited, or peradventure you want to do business with us, you have a construction, you have a property that you want us to manage for you, or you have a construction in view, we are your go-to person. Like I said, our mantra is that we are the Julius Berger for the everyday person. However, the reason why we are here today is slightly different. We are here to discuss house rentals. We're here to discuss house rentals in your city. So we know that our followers are not just in Lagos, they cut across, all the states in Nigeria. And we know this from the feedbacks we get in our DMs consistently. We get questions about rentals a lot, and it's the reason why we decided, to come up with this webinar so that we can, generally educate the populace and let you know what to look out for, the things to note, and all of that when you want to rent an apartment. And hopefully we pray that someday you would own your own apartment. And of course, it's one of the things we're going to discuss at the end of the day, because we have our property investment person here that is going to, talk to us about how to own your property, and you don't necessarily have to have $1 million as it were. So we have lineup of amazing speakers that are going to educate us as regards house rentals in our city. And before we move on, I would like to tender an apology. So a link will be shared right now in the comments section. I really don't know how this will work, but I really trust that you'll be able to follow us regardless. So we're having issues on our end with, sharing our screen and all of that. And so we had resorted to allowing access to our slides. So we're going to share that on the comment section now. Please let me just very quickly. I want to be sure, can you still hear me? Is everybody still here? Please, I want to respond. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, so like I mentioned, yeah, that's the link to our slides. I trust that in the course of in the course of the webinar, we'll get to sort this issue, and then we'll be able to share our screen. Also, we will not be able to automatically mute everybody from our end. So I plead with us that we remain muted. Like, let's just adhere to this instruction. If you want to say something, please just raise your hand, and then whoever is speaking at the moment will give you the permission to speak. If you're not given the permission to speak, you can just type, your question or your comment in the comments or in the chat box. So without wasting more time, like I mentioned earlier, we have a lineup of amazing speakers. We have a lineup of amazing speakers here that we have a lineup of amazing speakers here that are going to, bring us into the conversation very beautifully. So to start with, of course, I know everybody is eager and expectant. Everybody wants to hear the snag inspector. So we're going to begin with the snag inspector. He's going to take us on basically introduction and also the things to look out for when you want to rent an apartment in your city. So I'm going to mute my mic now and then hand over to the snag inspector. Thank you. Snag inspector, over to you, sir. Please, can you unmute your mic?
Can you hear me? Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Stick with Zoom, and so we are trying to find an alternative solution to that. But I believe we have all seen the point, the slideshow. It's how to prevent. First of all, I'd like to ask before we go ahead that as many of us like us to share with our friends, at least 10 friends, share the Zoom link on our WhatsApp status. People are about to, because of the, excuse me, because of the situation in the economy, we know that prices tend to shift around this time. And because the prices are shifting around this time, we are sure that a lot of people will be paying slightly higher rates than normal in the coming months. I mean, basically due to inflation. So we're so, so we're seeing the rents jump some by as much as 30 to 70, 80, 100%. And we are basically, of course, happy. We are hoping we can. So let's share with as many of our friends that who are trying to get houses to rent. People are trying to get houses to rent. Let's see how we can. So I'm just trying to do a mix 12 hours before our screen comes back. Pardon me. So please let's try to share with our friends. This is just a mix solution while we try to fix actual.
Okay. No, we cannot hear you, sir. Actually, I guess maybe because you're trying to work on the screen, but
okay.
If you can just, yes, sir, if you can just stay in a position so that your mic can be positioned very well, so we can hear you properly. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So is the sound consistent right now?
Yes, it is, but you can still, increase the volume. Thank you, sir.
All right. So thank you again. So like I was saying, please share this link with as many of the friends as possible who will be needing this via WhatsApp, TikTok, or any other. I said TikTok. I'm so used to that. I meant Twitter. TikTok has taken over Twitter nowadays. So let's just share and get as many involved, because these things they may look common and simple, but a lot of us overlook it, and then we ask ourselves, why did I make this mistake when it's eventually happened? So let's get right into it. What is what is your worst house renting experience? I mean, everybody has experienced something. So I'd like us to just type Bridget would take note of the response. What is your worst house rent experience? Is it a case of fence collapse? Is it a case of water leaks? Is it a case of lack of privacy due to weak walls? Some people are talking in one room and you're hearing another. I lived in a house once where I could tell what somebody was saying in their house from another, well, not my house anyway, let me be specific. I visited the person, and whatever they were, tell what was going on in the
Now, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right.
You have to go back a few steps back, because we really didn't hear most of what you said.
Interesting. Okay. So I was on bad telecom service, and I was saying that with certain locations, you need to take your mobile devices, multiple mobile devices. If you have, almost everyone has dual SIM phones anyway, so you can intentionally, for the purpose of that period where you are searching for where you are house hunting, take your phone because there are areas where only MTN works, for example. And then you know that there are days when MTN will go off for 2 to 3 days, and then you need a backup. So you go with the 3 prominent service providers, right? MTN, Airtel, Glo, maybe Etisalat. I don't know well about those ones, but basically in fact, somebody told me that he does that on my Snag Inspector page, that he basically carries 4 devices and he tests them. Please, when I say test, I'm not saying for calls, I'm saying for internet, because we're in the age of remote work and you may not have access to fixed wireless, the way we have it is, CobraNet, IPNX and the likes in people's houses. Not everybody will have. Not everybody would have access to those. So for telecom service, it is very critical that you that you test as many networks as you can. That's number 1. Number 2, you can also, another important thing is avoid the ground floor. Avoid the ground floor if you are going to be doing remote work. So please, for those of you who are remote workers, take note of this. Avoid the ground floor, because on the ground floor, you are likely to be challenged in the area of propagation of waves. In simple English is that the concrete will affect the flow of waves. That's the simple way to put it. Those who know physics can explain better. But if you've been to buildings that have, ground floor parking, you would notice that at the basement, the network service, if you've been to, those hotels in VI, Ikoyi, Ikeja, the rest that have those basement parkings, you notice that your cell phone reception and your internet service is usually poorer on the basement. So if you are going to live in a building, a 10th floor building, you should avoid the ground floor and the first floor if internet service is very important to you. Again, some of these factors are important to Mr. A, they are not important to Mr. B, right? So for telecoms, I just think we should start with that your telecom service, it is very critical that you, number 1, take along multiple service provider routers if you have them, especially if you have the one you are using where you're moving from. So when you're house hunting, don't just go and say, I like the physical. Test those things. It's very important, so you can jot that down so that you don't forget. Moving forward, this is primary, obviously more important. Water is life. Water is life, and water is essential for daily living. So access to quality water for portability should be primary. Of course, we all know this. Water should be odorless, colorless, tasteless, and consistently free flowing, assuming service fees are paid for. Okay, so if you have access to state water board supply, pay for it. So there are two things. Number one, we know that not everybody has access to, in different states, Lagos, Ogun, Delta, Rivers. We all have state water boards, but not all the states water boards are functioning anymore. So I'm just saying, in a case where you have access to that, they generally purify their water. So it is strongly advised, if you have access to state water board, the purification you will need to do to their water will be very minimal, maybe just boiling and leaving to settle, so that chlorine and all of that, but they are generally fine. Okay. However, when you are dealing with boreholes and wells, then you now start thinking of filtration systems and all of that. So if you have access to clean water, if you find a place with clean water, even if you don't like the location, if health is your personal priority, and I assume everybody's priority is health, then I think you should stick with that, because especially if you live in Lagos, you realize that clean water is rare. If you live in a place like Abuja, I'm aware we have different people here, so for different locations, maybe along the line we'll try and ask people their locations. If you live in a place like Abuja, you may be fortunate because the artesian level and all of that, that's the underground water level is still high and all of that, and there are many rocks, Kaduna, those kinds of places, they can get fairly clean water out of their boreholes, so they may not need so much. But if you live in the southern part of Nigeria along the riverbeds, so if you live in Rivers State, if you live in Delta State, if you live in Akwa Ibom, clean water from your borehole is not guaranteed. Even if it looks transparent, it may be hard. Now, check to see if it is hard or soft. You may have seen some of our snag inspector videos before, where we talked about hard water in Lekki and how that affects the quality of your bathroom. And some of you, of course, a lot of us, not even some of you, nobody likes the bathroom looking dirty. Nobody likes their taps looking rusty after 2 to 3 years. Now, the truth is, most landlords will not give you the high quality taps. That's 100%. So you may choose to change your taps, but if you even change the taps, as far as the water is hard, when the soap forms, all of that chemistry, calcification and all that, you are going to have those patches on your taps. So you need to be sure that the water in the house is not hard. If it is hard, well, there are systems to soften water. They're right now quite expensive, but basic way to check if your water is hard, take a bar of soap along. Now I'm telling you things to take along. You probably feel like an inspector when you're going to check for your house, but just take a bar of soap along, wash your hand with the soap water, run the water. If the soap doesn't foam in your hand, it is hard water. That's the very simple test. If it doesn't foam, when you just put a little bit of soap on your palm and you just rub it again, and the water is flowing, then it's bad. If the water is not flowing in the house at all, that's another problem. There are disease risks and all of that. So that would be your choice. But of course, water should at least be flowing. And then also determine if there are no impurities around your water source. This is very critical. A lot of people have their boreholes near to, that is the fence on your own house. Let me explain what I mean. Your own compound, the borehole may be far from the septic tank and the toilet waste areas. But for other people, sorry, I'm stopping the video here. But for other people, the fence may be just by, your borehole in your own compound, the next compound, they may have a well beside it. They may have, in the Southwest, a lot of people bury people in their compound. So you should be very, very conscious or very, very wary about those kinds of things, because that's how water gets impure. So ensure that there are no septic tanks. So again, what I'm saying is, don't just focus on your own environment. Check also the neighboring environment. That's very critical. The neighboring, should I call them compounds? Let's use the word compound. That's number 2. Determine that no bodies are buried. Number 3, electricity. Now we all know about this band A, band A to band E. Be aware of the potential meter problem. Check for potentially inherited power debts. Yes, make sure that everybody asks for that nowadays. But also be sure that what you are on band A, band B, and all of that, so that you know the cost and the amount of energy you anticipate. So I think we are all clear on this generally. Then another thing is environmental safety. So look out for installations such as fence. So I'm going to be sharing a few videos shortly with us. I think maybe Ms. Bridget should also share that link so that everyone can just watch those videos. But it would have been nice for us to play it if the Zoom was working. So look out for installation. So in the video, there is a video I would have loved to play for us. This happened live in Lagos Island, where someone's vehicle was damaged by a fence. So look out for potential damages on fence. Look out for moisture marks. So what I will advise, again, we have a picture for this. I'm going to see. I really wish we can share with everyone. Anyway, yeah. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll share some of these things with us after this show. So fences that have some form. Now, generally, fences are supposed to be built on. If you see this in this picture, for example, it's just directly fenced. There's no. Okay, Bridget started. Thank you very much. So that's the video. Thank you very much. So we can all see that video on Mrs. Bridget's screen. Yeah, you can just loop it. Yes. So this happened live, and it's about I think that was 2019 or 2020. The fence just caved in. There are signs when a fence is about to cave in. I've also seen a place where somebody's house and Bridget, you can just loop the video or play all the videos at once and then loop them.
Okay.
Then you can mute them, yes, so that they'll be playing while I'm speaking. So take note of, look around for cracks on the fence, number 1. Everywhere you see, as a general principle, so you are not engineers, those who are engineers will agree, but as a general principle, it is more dangerous to have vertical cracks, that's cracks from the top to the bottom, than cracks from left to right. So cracks from left to right can also be bad. I'm not saying they're not bad, but cracks from top to bottom should worry you. So if you see cracks, especially if they are up to, we usually say 5 mm wide. I cannot give you that in specific terms, but let me just say, if your biro can go through the crack, if you have a biro with you, if your pen can go through the crack, you should begin to be concerned, especially if it is consistent. If it's not that it just started and stopped randomly in the middle, there is a possibility. So also use your eyes to see if it looks like it is leaning towards the left, towards the right. So please be conscious about potential collapse of fences, because as you've seen in that video, that cars get damaged, assets get damaged in that process. Also look out for cracks. Now, another thing, a lot of people park on soakaway. Please, if you have your car, if you love your car, and if you love your life, as a general principle, any house that any developer in Nigeria is building, except it is Julius Berger that built it, or people like SpaceCube that built it and even at that, it also depends on what the design of that place is, because sometimes the design of that place is so that they will just have flower garden and all of that. So don't ever assume that the soakaway is reinforced so you can park your car on top of it. As a general principle, don't park your car on anybody's soakaway pit, even if it's Julius Berger that built it, because the person may have designed it for something else, and they would only build what was designed. They would not build out of design. So please take note of that. Don't park on soakaway pit. Avoid letting your children play on them. But if they are playing on them, just light play. Nobody's jumping and doing anything. We've all heard of people who have fallen, torn their thighs or something. So please, that is important. Next slide. environment. Oh, sorry, I cannot move slide. What's that? Okay, so next slide, the kitchen. Yeah. So the space of the kitchen, is it spacious? How spacious is your kitchen? Does it have sufficient space for storage? So a lot of mini flats have this issue anyway. Those larger flats tend to have sufficient storage space. It is critical to ensure that you don't have damp space under your kitchen sink. Ensure that so by yourself, you turn yourself to snag inspector. That's what we're telling you now. Check under, open the tap and see that it is not leaking. Because once it is leaking, that place becomes damp. You begin to attract cockroaches and other things in your kitchen. You will not like the house you see. So ensure there's proper ventilation. The picture we have here, this is a real house for rent, and see how the kitchen looks, and somebody is going to pay about 800K for this type of house. Of course, that's an abomination. So there should also be secondary door. There should be a secondary door in every kitchen. You should not have one door. For safety, exit number one, because we typically do a lot of fire and a lot of frying and a lot of those things in our kitchens, and we usually use gas. So you should at least have a door to escape in case of any emergency. You should have a door to open in case you need extra air and all of that. Okay, then another thing to consider, structural elements, the roof. I would okay. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to confirm that we haven't. Okay, Mrs. Bridget, are we all here together?
Yes, we have, sir, and you can share your screen. I'll just stop sharing.
Oh, I can now share screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Because I saw the messages, but I didn't quite understand. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for bearing with our technical issues. So let's continue. So things to consider: your roof. If some of us saw the video I shared when we first shared about the seminar, I actually visited that site. So number one, how do I say this? Roofs in Nigeria are not as good as they used to be anymore. I'm still trying to do a video on old roofs on buildings, built in the 60s, 70s, where in fact I was told of an estate that was demolished recently, built by Olabisi Onabanjo, former governor of Ogun State, in 1978. And I mean, I said, is it 78 or 70? Sorry, 79. 78 was military. Yes, 79, 80 something. And that's they took the roofing materials from the other building to to go and roof new buildings. You understand? They use the timber from a 1979 building to go and roof new buildings in 2024. So it is so roofs are not done that way anymore in Nigeria, because so let me explain. Number one is that we don't have sufficient timber in Nigeria. We are not a timber country. Our wood reserves are not comparable, maybe in Cross River and some of those states, but we don't have all of that in the Southwest. We don't have all of that in the North. So basically, we don't have strong trees, in simple English. Okay, so when the average developer roofs for you, you know that the lifespan of the roof is at best 20 years. And that's why people like us, we use, light gauge steel, and the likes. So I'm just giving you the background so that, first of all, you know that even if your developer has good conscience, your landlord has good conscience, the best that will happen is that his roof will spoil in 20 years. It's not anybody's making. That's the type of, except to use steel. Okay, so that's number one. Now, how do you tell if the roof is at least done properly? So in this case, with what I've said, I think I've made it clear that if you find an old house, you know, a house built in the 80s that is properly renovated and maintained, it would be a good choice, right? I mean, if it's all your boxes. So some of those Surulere houses, for those in Lagos, some of those houses in federal housing estates, you know, Amuwo, Odofin, and all of those places, you may be in good company in those kinds of locations. So you most likely be able to see the ceilings. That's usually where, because you are not likely to be able to climb the roof. If you can see a damaged roof from the outside, that means it's really, really bad. But as a non-technical person, you most likely will only be able to see it from inside, because of course there'll be in the common areas, that's in the stairwell, for example. You know, you can see some leaks. You can see maybe the ceiling strips are getting bad. Then you know that, okay, there's a leak. And then again, this is the most critical part. Inspect your house after it rains. If now, a lot of people are not able to do that because you can't plan some of these things. But if you can, and I know a lot of people like to rent in December so that they can save from January to December, that is financial wisdom. But I'm just saying what works. Rent your house in June, rent your house in July. If you are renting in southern Nigeria, maybe in northern Nigeria the rule is different, but in southern Nigeria, I've lived in Akwa Ibom, I've stayed in a few other southern states. I can tell you, the best thing to do is to visit the site the day after it. If it has, in fact, if you can, put your head in the rain and visit while it is raining. Okay. I'm sure some of us have also seen some of these things. So houses with water tanks on the roof are more likely to leak because, of course, there's a stopping mechanism in those tanks, and sometimes those mechanisms fail, and so there's overflow. And once there's overflow, no matter what you have used to protect the slab, it will fail at some point. So once you see a house with water tank, except you are not planning to stay there for more than a year, just to know that at some point you start experiencing water leaks, which can lead to structural damage and partial collapse. Okay. So another structural element, next slide, is walls, beams, and slabs. This one is a bit technical, so I'll just try and simplify it. Look at the external walls again. Like I said, if there are vertical cracks, if the cracks are from top to bottom, run away. Don't try to explain and understand. If the cracks are from left to right, look at the pattern. If they are long and if they are wide enough to take in your biro, take a pen along. If your pen can enter, run away. Generally, if you see cracks that your pen can enter, just run away. I think that's a simple way to put it. See if the ceiling slab appears chipped in any way. Once you begin to see, because I mean, houses in Lekki, for example, there's a problem we have in Lekki, not Lekki generally. Generally in Nigeria, we don't use the right sand when we mix our concrete. Not everybody is patient enough. On one of our projects recently, our architect had to reject a particular sand and say, no, this sand will not serve our concrete well. It's as if you are using, as if you are just making your concrete into powder. After a few years, it will just start turning into powder. And that's what some of the developers use right now. I'm telling you that for free. So once you see that you touch your ceiling, if you are tall enough or if you can have access to the ceiling, I mean, in a case where you can touch the ceiling slab and you can see that it is peeling, like, what's the word? It is becoming sandy. I mean, I'm trying to simplify it. I don't want to use the technical terms. So if it starts chipping off, then you know that there's a potential that, except it is plastering, but if it's not plastering, then you know there's a potential for collapse, and we don't want to live in a house that can collapse. Then a basic thing you can also do, jump on this ground. This is a common you don't have to bring in machines, because to do a structural integrity test you probably need ₦500,000. So except you are renting a mansion, you probably don't need that. So do a basic step, jump at 2 or 3 points in the building. If the vibrations are fast, if the vibrations stop, how do I put this in a non-technical way? Your heartbeat and your there's a way it works that basically once you land, you should be able to hear your heartbeat more than you hear the vibration of the building. So if you can hear the vibration of the building and you can't hear your heartbeat, there's probably a problem. Or I think that's the way I can explain it without sounding too technical. But basically, floor slabs are meant to vibrate. That is normal. Concrete floors are meant to vibrate, but they should not vibrate after you've jumped for more than maybe 2 to 3 seconds. Okay, so don't be a victim of potential collapse. Car park and general security. So Snag Inspector 2, you unmute your mic soon. She will share a story with us very quickly. Ensure that your location is safe enough to, park outside. And of course, if you are receiving guests, ensure that your guests are also safe. So someone's guest had their car stolen. Can you quickly share that story with us, Snag Inspector 2? You can unmute your mic.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
So, like he said, like Snag Inspector 1 said, it's very important when you want to rent a house that you look out for a parking space. If there's no parking space, as in most houses, then you check if the surrounding is quite safe for you to park outside. There's this story of my friend who went to visit a friend in his house, and there's no parking space inside the compound, so he parked his car outside, only to come out later, when it was morning, to drive off, and then he saw that his car has been stolen. And you know how it is in Nigeria, it's practically impossible for you to recover a stolen car. So that's how his assets went like that, because he used it to run an Uber service. So that's one thing you should consider. It's very, very important. And you shouldn't just take the landlord's word for it or the agent's word for it. If someone's car was stolen last week, and the house does not have a parking space, and you ask the landlord, is it safe for me to park my car outside? Most landlords, they probably tell you that it's probably safe because they just want you to pay the money. So please do your findings and survey the area and ask people around.
All right, thank you very much. So it's really like story. I would have asked you to give us the location.
Hello.
Can you give them? Because we need to, just need to emphasize that these are real stories and these are real people that this
Okay, yeah,
happened.
yeah. So I think it happened to him at Ikeja. He visited the person, his friend.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. So and thank you very much. So that leads to the second point. So if the place now, so what's the general principle to this? Number one, there are streets that we all know that you can actually park, right? There are streets where they are gated streets where you can leave your car. I've stayed in places where you leave your car on the road. It's the exact way everything is. That involves extra investigation. The point of all of this is you don't rush, no matter how desperate, even if they are chasing you out of your current house, maybe you just take a day or two of leave, send somebody, pose as somebody, maybe send a colleague of yours to pose as a police officer, just ask around, ask the police if there's a police station around there, ask the DPO in the area, what are the most common things, especially if you have valuable things. I don't know. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't consider their assets as valuable anyway. But sorry about this. it's important that you consider how valuable your assets are. So carry out those security findings. Now, general security features very quickly. Gates, windows, balconies. Gates that shut properly are preferable with security officer, not so there are compounds where you have 14 dwellers, 13 dwellers. Yes, they may be big and all that. Everyone having access to the key to the gate may be messy. So, I mean, some of us have experienced that, so I don't think there's much to explain about that. Windows with functioning and durable lock mechanisms. So check your windows very well, all your windows. If you are renting a three, you are a married couple, especially because if you are doing a 1 to 2 bedroom, you can probably check it alone. If you are a married couple, 3, 4 bedroom, you get your spouse and maybe your children or whoever is going to be living with you. Check every window, each one of their lock mechanisms. If the lock mechanisms are not okay, take note of them. Ensure the landlord fixes them. These small things, there are ways you can, there are actually ways you can undo a window neatly before the person leaves gradually, and then the person comes out, you go into the house, pick whatever you want to pick and come back. Especially with these windows they do nowadays with aluminum burglar bars. They say they are beautiful, but they are very unsafe, and that's why I made a video on them. I think it was in December or early January, I made a video on them. So please, wrought iron steel burglar bars are always better. They cannot easily be, chiseled out and all of that. Enclosed bungalows, balconies can be accessible with ladders. So your balconies facing the streets are generally safe because at least somebody will be able to see something. But balconies at the backyard, balconies facing a canal, balconies facing, depending on which city you are living. If you are living, balconies facing a rock and somebody can just jump in. If you are living in somewhere like Gwarinpa, for example, in Abuja, there are a lot of rocks in that kind of place, and your balcony is facing the rock, then you need CCTV in such a place. And we have a partner company that installs CCTV cameras. In fact, that's our standard procedure. Any property we engage in, for our constructions and all that, we get CCTV cameras and connect the owner instantly. So we consider that. So when you have a house with enclosed balcony, I mean balconies that are not open to the street, where your community can participate in security, please ensure that you provide closed circuit cameras, solar or whatever, or solar or powered by direct electricity. Proximity to essential services. Now, this is specifically for pregnant married people. So, pregnant couple. So consider the distance to hospitals and primary, even if your primary hospital is not in that location, right? So your primary hospital may be, especially people living in cities like, again, Abuja, Lagos, your hospital may be, if you're in Abuja, for example, you may be using a hospital like Limi Hospital, you may be using, something in Jabi, and you are living somewhere like Kuje. That happens, right? But you should at least have a primary center nearby, especially if you are a pregnant couple or an expecting couple, whatever you would like to call yourselves, okay? And then primary, nursery schools, at least for the immediate needs of your family, for emergencies and all that. So this is highly a family thing to consider. So don't rush to move from your current residence. If you have a significant commute to work, so if you are in a city like, again, I would use Abuja. So if you are working if you're working in the central area and you are living as far away as maybe Gwagwalada, which happens, that's a very significant commute time. You definitely don't want to live deep inside. You need to live close to the highway, at least for your own safety. Okay, so consider your own. Then, of course, when we say essential services, we are also talking about places where, God forbid, in the case of a fire service can quickly get there. God forbid, in case of a robbery, you can quickly run to, even if you are not, the police will not come to you, you can quickly run to them and say, okay, they've written letter, let us run and stay with the police people, So proximity to the access to the highways, because I mean, in certain cities, once you are far away from the major road, you are not, you are a high risk asset. Noise levels are very important. Consider your proximity from. Can you live near an airport? Can you tolerate an airport? So one of my partners lives near an airport, and when we want to make phone calls, I mean, it's very. We have once in a while where we just have to pause the conversation. That may not be a problem for you, but if you are working in a remote job where you're always making phone calls, you're always Zoom meetings, you may not want to live in that part of Ikeja. You may want to live in Ikeja GRA. You may not want to live in Oshodi, where you are close, or what do you call this other area? Agege, cement, places where the planes are closer to ground when they're taking off for landing. So that's important. Alternatively, is it too quiet? So again, if you are a music person, so when I made one of my videos about silent windows, someone said wanted to make their windows quiet, and I explained you'd have to do a lot of this and that. You have to silent. Your walls have to be buffered basically, and then your doors and then your glass, that's a lot of money. So why not live in a quiet area where you just need to do little to make it quieter? If you are a content creator, for example, you don't want to live in a noisy area like Oshodi. Okay, so again, is it too quiet, and is your lifestyle noisy? Are you a music person? These are considerations. Then, yes, this is the interesting one. Snag Inspector 2 will take us on this again. So how normal is the house? I would like us to write in the comments quickly our spooky experiences. I will review the comments while we take our questions and answers. But have we ever experienced spooky houses? I'd like Snag Inspector 2 to speak to us on some of those extraterrestrial activities she has witnessed before in Edo State. So they say in Edo State and Kogi State, people fly in the day. Some people say it's not true. In Ijebu land, some people say, somebody said they rented a house and somebody was flogging them. Somebody was flogging them and they had marks. Where I wouldn't tell you that it is impossible, but I'll just tell you that there are a few things. You cannot tell everything, obviously, but there are a few things to look out for. The first thing I will say for free is go with somebody who you trust their spiritual sense. If you have a good wife or husband, go with that husband. If the person says they don't like the house, please, no matter how fine the house is, run away. All right, so Snag Inspector 2, over to you.
This might sound like it might sound funny to most of us here. And but it's something that happens like this. So the one I've experienced is that while I was in school, because I studied in Uniben. So while in school, there was this hostel that I lived in. I always felt like there was someone else in the room, like with me. At times it could happen in the day, it could happen at night. And I'll just shake it off and pray about it because I believe in God. So I'll pray about it and then the presence will leave. I thought it was all me, or maybe it's just my room, until someone else living in the hostel too was saying the same thing. And not only that, I've had other experiences where I came out of my house and I saw my slippers that I left outside. They used to say, don't leave your slippers outside when you want to go and sleep in the night. It's that day that I knew why they used to say it too. I came out and I saw my slippers. It was turned like the normal way you take off your shoes when you want to enter into the house. It was turned and they set it for me, like when you are coming out and someone had already set your shoe for you to just put in your leg and just go. And that's not how I pulled off my slippers. And then another crazy one happened where a white substance was placed on the front of my door, just only my door, and that happened in broad daylight. Like it was placed in an ark on my doorstep. So many other things, so many crazy things happen. So a lot of us might not believe in these things, but these are you just think that they are just stories, but these are actual experiences, and these things happen. We are living in Africa. It's not. I know someone that said she has literally in her village, when she went to her village, that she saw, they woke up one morning and they saw a woman stuck on the roof of a four-story building. How did she get there? Nobody knows. They shall brought her down, but it's obvious everybody knew she was probably flying. So, in other words, I'm just basically saying is that you should consider these things when you go to a house, when you want to rent a house. And one of the good signs for you to know these things is if you check out this house and it's very, very good, like a beautiful house, but it's uninhabited, like there's nobody living in the house and it's just too cheap. That's one of the red flag. It's not, you should not really, really consider staying in that house, that kind of house. So that's my experience, and just be keen. If you believe in God, please pray when you want to rent your houses, because it does not make sense when you get a good house that fits at night, you find yourself levitating off your bed. It's not a very nice experience. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So other signs again, houses that are good houses that are uninhabited for a long period. So there was this popular house in Ikoyi. I'm trying to remember the street, but it had not, nobody had stayed there for up to 15 years. There's another house like that in Onitsha. Like these houses are established on, if you check Nairaland, their stories are there. There's a popular house in Abeokuta also. These houses, people, they are fine houses, beautiful houses, but they are just empty. So somebody now chooses to renovate these houses. You now choose to go and stay there. Somewhere that somebody has not stayed for 15 years. Now you get mine though. So that's number one. Of course, places that are usually cheap. Places with just one tenant, and that tenant comes in and then uses his back to walk into the compound, all those kinds of things. Again, like some people say, well, it depends on what you carry. So if you also carry what passes their power, fine. I mean, but we're just letting you know that you should be conscious of what happens in these places. There are people that have said, oh, somebody did something strange to build a house, and so because of that, the house became haunted and all of that. So be conscious of these for your peace of mind. Second to this is about the last for me is the entrance and exit doors. So I've mentioned a few things that you should take along, and this is the last. Take along a tape, a measuring tape. Thanks to Nigeria's economy, is now about 3,000 naira. It used to be just about 800 naira. A 3-meter tape. Make sure your average chair, your sofa, is usually just about 600 millimeters. If you can write this down, please do. But you can also Google it. It's a common thing. It's usually about 600 to 750 wide, depending on the design. And then the height maybe about 800 So basically a box of 800 by 800 should be able to fit into your door with your hand, not the one that you push it in and then I have lost furniture. A lot of people have lost furniture. You had to cut the furniture, the fabric or the leather had to be torn apart and all that because the door was not wide. Your door should be at least 1 meter wide. So when you are going to rent and the agent is taking you along, carry tape rule. They will say your own is too much. Tell them snag inspector said so. Carry tape. If you are a tailor, you don't need that one. Just take your tape rule. I think for tape rule, I don't know. I think the measurement for tape rule is different anyway, but convert meters, 1 meter or 1.2 meters is this minimum your main entrance door should be. And then your room doors should be not less than 900 millimeters wide. If the space is smaller, your furniture will struggle. And don't say, oh, because I don't have money at this moment. The day you want to buy bigger furniture is the day you now remember, if I had known. So please consider that your fridge as well, your staircase should not be tight. I didn't type that here, but your staircase should also be able to accommodate this. Or they should have a balcony that is wide enough and there should be a pulley to a pulley system available. Otherwise, your furniture, your electronics can get damaged, especially your fridges and freezers and washing machines, those devices that are slightly wide-bodied. So this is significant. So take along a tape. As we recap, take along a tape, take along network service, devices from other providers, wear shoes that you can use to jump, and that is important. Now, I'll be showing you a couple of video clips as we wrap up before we go back to the last 3 slides, because some of you had asked us questions about, some of you had asked us questions about how to know if a house is.
This single self-contained is available for rent at Katampe, Abuja, and is going for 400K per annum. The landlord of this apartment.
So this person is trying to rent this type of house now you can clearly tell on seeing this house that there is going to be, now the kitchen, the toilet
see
itself.
the video, sir.
You can't see the video. Okay. Oh, my.
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. And I was already analyzing what is. Give me a second. I'll play it. I'll reshare. I just have to reshare the screen. Just give me a second. Okay, so this is an advert. I believe we can all see it now.
Yes, we can, sir.
Yes. So this person, now I'm not even about the price. Just now, I just paused. Look at where my mouse is hovering around. Whenever you see marks like this on any wall, there's something wrong. Something that will lead to mold, something that, and I believe I've made about 3 videos about mold, algae, they contribute to respiratory illness. Okay. When I think I'll just leave you to research that and talk to your doctors about it. So especially if you already have a history of asthma and the likes, don't even play around them. So when you see walls like this, there are a lot of possibilities. There are about 10 possibilities, but the fundamental thing is that there's water somewhere and there is cement, and once water mixes with cement in the air, those who know chemistry know all the acid whatever reactions that happen, so you are going to breathe that in. So number 1 is, once you see patched walls like this, run away. Now the solution to some of these issues we'll try and mention downwards, but I'll just highlight to you. You may not be able to afford, this is 400K, you may only be able to afford 450K. We know it would be good to consider shared houses. So some of these things we'll be mentioning them, but I'm just giving you tips as it were, and then we'll talk along the line so that we understand that sometimes it's good to be realistic and just there's a house somewhere in Lugbe in Abuja where I'm aware of 3 core members decided to take the house because they obviously wouldn't have been able to afford 1.2 million naira on their own, but 3 of them 400K. So 3 of them would have taken 400K somewhere that would have been cheaper, but 3 of them coming together with 1.2, and I think total package was about 1.5. It saved them a lot of stress. It was a properly built house and all of that, and I'm not going to go into details, but my point is, I think we should begin to consider sharing houses. Okay, so this kind of adverts, for example, they have shown you this. Once you see, again, this is common in Abuja, that's why I'm showing this for those who are renting in Abuja that are watching this or will be watching this. This is very common in Abuja. The problem of Abuja, I will tell you for free, they don't use the block that is the blocks they use to build their houses are 75 to 90% of the time made from chippings, so they are not strong enough compared to what we use in the southwest or south. Okay, so generally this is a problem in Abuja, and they usually don't damp-proof their floors. So once you see this in Abuja, know that you are going to be dealing with what do you call it, respiratory issues. It's not a curse, it's like it's guaranteed. This again is a video of the fence. So this is real life. This is not as you can see, it's not photoshopped. They parked and then this fence collapsed. Okay, so these people lost their cars. This is real life, okay? So again, I'm just showing us this so that we know that we are not just raising alarm. These are things that have happened. Now, for the moisture marks that we've talked about, someone's mic is on. So for the moisture marks that we've talked about, this is in Lekki. This is in Lekki. So once you start seeing green like this kind of fence, like I told this person, it is likely to fall. Now you can see this lateral, this line, right? This transverse line along the fence. It's not because that one is because they laid another block, set of blocks on top and they plastered actually. But because of this weakness, there's a potential that, everything is going to crumble. Let me not go too technical. Everything is going to crumble at some point. You don't want to be in the house the day to collapse. So somebody will say, oh, are we now going to, I'm not saying you should not rent a house. I'm just saying that this is the risk. So have it in mind so that in case it happens, you know that, oh, I knew that there was a potential for collapse. I'm not saying that they are perfect houses. I'm just saying as much as possible, mitigate the risk such that you get the potential best houses that you can get. All right, so I'll be handing over right now to okay, I should share the screen again. I'll be handing it back to my colleague to take us through the final slides. Thank you very much. Mr. Funshaw would come up now.
Thank you so much, Snag Inspector. Thank you so much, Snag Inspector 1. Thank you so much, Snag Inspector 2. I believe we've heard a lot. I like listening to you. I'm like, whoa. So where are the good houses in Lagos actually, right? And in the spirit of that, there was a post I saw recently that was really funny. I want to share my screen so that you can it's just for laughs anyways. Yeah, so I'll just read it out and then we go to the next thing. So I don't know if we came across this post. Can you see my screen? Okay, I feel like I'm talking to myself. Okay, good. Yeah. So so this person said, I went house hunting today and it took me to a 2-bed for 3.5. So this is the front and backyard. When I complained about the canal, the man said, look at fish. And then this other person's comment was funny. He said, I once went house hunting and they buried someone directly behind the window. I showed the agent and he shrugged and said, it's nothing. We will all die one day. I'm saying all of this to say that these things are real. It seems like they are not real, right? Except that when you go house hunting, particularly in Lagos with agents, they take you to places and you're wondering, what's up? Who even built this house in the first place? And that's one of the reasons why we are taking our time to pick these little tiny details that you seem to miss. There are times that you just walk to the house, you see the painting and all of that. It kind of looks glamorous, and then it kind of lowers your guard, and you don't go in and actually check out for the things that you should check out for rather. And that's why we listed out all of these things deliberately. These are things that you can, just overlook if you don't pay attention to details. So that's what we are calling your attention to pay attention to all of these little details. To take us further, I'm going to be bringing up Mr. Olufunsho Akinsoya. He's the Executive Director of Spaceship Development Limited, and is also the President of Rainy Day Cooperative. So, Mr. Funshaw, you can unmute your mic, sir. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Bridget, for having us. It's a pleasure to speak with us heart to heart today. And I know we have asked you to invite everybody, but many are called, few are chosen. So one of the things that we have experienced, Bridget, please display the slide for us. The slide for the questions, please. So some of the things that we do or many of the things that we do, they come from personal experiences. Myself, I've been a businessman for the better part of my adult life. I grew up outside of Lagos. I came into Lagos, tried to rent a house. Same thing with Snag Inspector One. Same thing with our dear Bridget here. We are men of like passion. And so the three questions I would like to ask you, which we have asked ourselves in the past, that has enabled us to make certain steps. These are the three questions. We see that the landscape for investing in Nigeria has changed. Before, people used to just buy land because let's just buy the land. But there has been a shift. And so the questions we like to ask ourselves, by ourselves, myself, yourself, your friends, is: do you want to earn steady returns on your investments? Have you bought bushland? If you have any comments, please, if you have done any of these things before, if you have bought bushland before in Ekpe or Mowe and you never got anything out of it, please share your experience. If you have bought all those, come and buy 500k land in Lusada, on the outskirts of Ibadan. Let's know what your experience is. The third one is: do you want to co-invest and let technical experts manage it? And the reason why we ask this question is that we see that people, just like renting, people make suboptimal decisions because they have just been told that they have to do certain things in certain ways. And one of the things that we found out early on is that, and I'm so sure you have watched Snag Inspector video in the past, people go to buy land hoping that they will sell to someone in the future at a more expensive price. Let me tell you today, stop doing it. I will tell you why. There is an investment theory that is called greater fool theory. And every time I see people do things that way, it is always going to come back to bite them. Whether it is crypto, whether it is shares, whether it is real estate, it can be anything, whether it is cars. As long as you are not technically equipped for that thing, do not buy with the hope that somebody is going to come and bail you out. I'm looking to share the link for what I mentioned. Do not invest in any assets because you are hoping that somebody is going to be more foolish than you to come and take it off from you. So you buy a land in the bush and you hope that I bought it 500k today. They said that in 6 months I will sell it for 1 million. Number one, the person telling you will sell it. If they are so confident about it, why didn't they buy it with their own money or tell their own family members? Why do they like you so much to tell you that they will guarantee? Most of them cannot even guarantee it, that they will buy the land from you in 6 months. Can they guarantee that? Most people cannot have that. So what we found out was that two things, and I remember that Snag Inspector video posted about lands that have problems, that you can't even access the land because the Omonile did not even do the proper due diligence in the first place. We have our ASV partner here. She also has our experience. I think we have our lawyer here too, our lawyer friend here too. He also has tons of experience. I mean, the amount of land scams going on in this country is so much so that there is an entire law firm dedicated to land scams. I won't mention their name, but that's all that they do. They only focus on land issues. And so when you build your entire investment portfolio or your money, your hard-earned money on something that is so risky that people dedicate their entire practice on it, and you are not a real estate expert, you are going to get burned. So what we designed is that we came together and said, let everybody bring their expertise. And when we bring our expertise, I will know something, you will know something, we will de-risk each other. So on our sojourn to find that, we decided to set up a cooperative society. And the cooperative society is called Rainy Day Coup. I'm going to share the link for Rainy Day Coup now. And what we essentially did with that was to bring ourselves as professionals together. So I studied engineering. I have been in IT business for a while. We have Snag Inspector who studied architecture and other related. He's also been a realtor. We have our ESG partner who is an estate surveyor. We have lawyers amongst us. We have other professionals amongst us who are coming together to say, we have bankers amongst us who are coming together to say, even we that we are experts, we are not going to do this alone. Let us come together and de-risk our exposure to assets. So what we did is that instead of going after land that you will be hoping and praying that it will appreciate in value, we are going to acquire existing properties, then we will share it amongst us by the amount of your participation. So how do I mean? So let's say a project is 2 billion naira. We have bought the building. We will divide it into shares, and it is not the normal shares, it is the cooperative shares, because the cooperative is registered with Lagos State. So there are existing guiding laws to how cooperatives can pool money together to invest in real estate. Many of us have parents that were cooperative members. We ourselves, some of us already belong to cooperatives. So what we did is to take something that everybody already understands and bring it and match it with our collective expertise. So we buy an existing building in town that we have analyzed and evaluated the rental prospects of it. So we won't go and buy a terrace, for example. I'm telling you for free because we are not sure of how quickly it will be rented. We would buy assets that we know that can be rented. Then let's say out of 2 billion, we divided the shares into 1,500 naira each, which gives about 1,360,000 shares. When we do that, I can see someone's name here, Tumishi Oguni, you can say, I want the minimum, which is 1,000 shares. That's 1,500 naira times 1,000, that's 1.5 million. And you invest, and you tell your friend, and that friend also invests. As we do that, everybody comes together to own that 2 billion naira asset. Instead of you taking that 1.5 million to go and buy land in the bush that you know nothing about, and you have no way of knowing whether the Omonele has been rightly appeased and settled. So what happens is that we are able to do two things. In a short time, we are able to begin to earn on that rental asset. Number two, we are able to already start earning before we even, if we decide to sell the building in the future, we have earned something on the rent, and we can say, okay, the building has appreciated in 20 years. We don't want to sell it, or in 15 years, we want to sell it for a bigger project. Number three, you are relying on the expertise of all the members of the cooperative and SpaceCube Africa, which is the technical partner managing these investments. SpaceCube owns Snag Inspector, as you have rightly heard. So the alignment of interest is 100%, if you ask me. Unlike a real estate company, which I choose not to mention their name, there are several of them, who after selling you property, they don't care about you, they just move on and they go do another thing. You will shout and shout and shout. At some point, maybe you write to FIJ newspaper to publish their name and shame them for what they have done. But the point of what we are saying is that we need to apply the things that already work. Just like we have seen with rentals, we are also seeing an opportunity to take on this kind of property. And I tell you for free, these properties are going to be rented out. So we are teaching you how to find a good renter will also ensure that these assets are well maintained. And even before buying them, we'll verify them. As I speak with you, we are verifying multiple properties at the same time. We go all the way to the courts to check if there's any court case on the property. And, all manner of searches are done so that you, the investor, you are at peace. And the person who is renting it is also at peace, so that your cash flow every month when the person is paying is almost 100% guaranteed. So if you have any question, and if you'd like to be a part of this, we would definitely keep you posted, but I've shared our website with you. You can just look through our website. If you like to register, you can register to be kept abreast of what we're doing. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Funsho Akinsoya, for that yet insightful delivery. So we do not waste time because we intend to wrap up at 12. We're going to do two things together now. We're going to take our legal considerations because, of course, there's the legal perspective to, house rentals, particularly in Lagos. Don't mind me, I keep emphasizing Lagos because I know the drama, that plays out in Lagos a lot of times when it comes to renting of apartments. Yeah, so we're going to do that alongside, responding to questions as well. So we're going to have our lawyer, Barrister Babatokbe. He and the snag inspector are going to go back and forth together, first of all, in giving us the legal perspective and also responding to questions. So, snag inspector Barrister Babatokbe, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon.
Right.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
All right. So I want to quickly bring you in with this story. Okay, this is real life. I will not mention the name of the person, but worked with us or has worked with us. A young man. So this person once repaired plumbing with his neighbor at about 162,000 naira. They also covered some estimated bills. So it's a combination of plumbing because they weren't having, water wasn't reaching the top of their house, the upper floor, and they were in the upper floor. They told the landlord said it's not his business, that they should fix it. They co-tenants for about 2 months before their prepaid meter came in. They also didn't pay for the estimated bills in that period. The landlord said they should sort it out, not his business. So 162,000 naira became their debt. They settled it amongst themselves. And then one thing led to another, and they decided that they were going to deduct it from their rent unilaterally without informing the landlord, because they already knew that the landlord was playing them. So they decided, okay, two can play the game. And it led to a major disagreement. And well, two of them somehow managed to engage their lawyers, and the lawyer wrote letter back and forth, and they negotiated. They found their way out. They didn't pay, each of them didn't pay 80,000 naira, but the landlord bullied them, increased rents. It was messy. One person left the house and all of that. This is true life story. I can tell you. But a lot of cases happen like that, and that's one of the things I would like you to address in addition to some of the things you addressed. Again, I want to thank you for coming in despite the short notice, and you've been a partner with us for almost 6 years. Thank you very much for standing with us.
Thank you.
But what in this particular case and in similar cases where tenants are fixing issues, because we've talked about water leakage, we've talked about bad taps, we've talked about collapsed fences, we've talked about roofs collapsing. How do you protect yourself legally? I'm sure some our attendees would like to find out. Those who will also be listening in on YouTube in future would like to find out, how do they protect themselves in their tenancy agreement and all of that? What is the way? Who pays for what and all of that?
Okay. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have me here, and thank you for the jobs that you've been doing too in assisting members of the general public make informed decisions in very risky terrain like getting houses and also acquiring property, especially in a place like Lagos. So in terms of renting apartments, I think everything starts with the due diligence. Unfortunately, oftentimes than not, because of the rush that comes with trying to get apartments, especially in Lagos, people hardly pay attention to some of these things, and that's usually when the problems start. I think it's important for just so I will talk about the issue of due diligence. When it comes to renting an apartment, especially in Lagos, I think you should also do not as granular or as detailed due diligence like you would do for when you are buying a property. Why I say this is because of some potential problem that you may run into. So, for example, the issue of utilities, power. We all know that nowadays people are transitioning from estimated metering into prepaid meter. One of the things that people often shy away from is doing that due diligence of, can I see the bill? Can you give me the number? Because if you don't take the pain to do all of that, the same way you have Shylock tenants is the same way you have Shylock landlords. So you must take that pain to go to the distribution center, the closest outlet in charge of your area. Go through and let them give you the number, let them give you the outstanding so that you know what you are getting into. And oftentimes, you should do all of this before money exchange hands. You should do it before money exchange, and before the moment consideration is furnished by the tenant to the landlord, especially some funny landlords. Trust me, you are not likely to get anything further. So before you part away with your money, don't fall into the error or sometimes agents telling you that, oh, there's 10, 20 people around. And that's one of the problems too, because agents are always after their agency fee. They are not concerned about your welfare. They are not your friend. So never fall into that error that they are your friend. Most importantly, the principal interest is there. So you should ask all these questions. Power is key. And I think, let me also be very objective and reasonable. See, if you are not getting a newly built apartment, you should also or equally lower your expectation in terms of how precinct or how new the facilities will be. Let us be very, very honest about that, because sometimes, see, I've also seen tenants wanting everything to be all new and all clean. It's likely you are not going to get all of those things 100%. But at the same time, there are some minimum standard. There are some non-negotiable things that you need to have there. So, for example, water. So for example, power. Like I said, those are non-negotiable. So you have to be wary of all about these things. In fact, for me, at the root of this thing is going to that apartment without being accompanied by anybody to go and ask around how that house is. Because sometimes people don't pay attention because the agent is there, will just becloud your judgment, will not allow you to ask questions. Go there unaccompanied, ask questions from people around that street. Oh, that house, what happens there? What is the nature of the landlord? Because some landlords are cantankerous. There are some houses, for example, I know a house in Yanowuru. I know a lot of people have talked about that house in Lagos, not once, not twice. That house trended at a point on Twitter. So, for example, if you are not aware, if you don't have information, or if maybe you got to know it on one of the property portals or websites online, and you go to those houses and they show you, oh, you are fine with what you see, you may not know the kind of things that you are getting into. So it's very important for you to do your due diligence, not only in terms of just asking maybe the landlord. You must also do it independently so that you get things right. And like I said, also manage your expectation if it's not a new house. For example, you should understand that there are some things that if the landlord has fixed, which is basically good for human habitation, you should be able to pick them up. So for example, like I always say, if one or two keys are not good, I don't expect that to be a big issue, to be honest, if you can pick that up. Because sometimes I've seen tenants harp on those things, and I'm like, sometimes you have to also look at it on both sides. You're not getting a new house. If it's a new house, you could have said all of these things should be in shape, but you are also going to see all those one or two issues with the facility. Another thing which is very important is your agreement. Sometimes, so as a matter of personal preference, I always make my agreement as granular as possible. Why is this? Is because I've encountered a whole lot of very terrible tenants. Equally, I've experienced landlords who are also terrible. Their own preoccupation is to get the money. So when you get that tenancy agreement, please make sure that it's granular. So, for example, when you look at this case study that we are talking about, if parties have agreed, especially on the issue of cost upfront, they may not likely have all of these issues. Because if, for example, in agreement, I always put it, when it comes to some wears and tears repairs as a tenant, you should be able to take that up. But if it is infrastructural or structural repairs, then it should be your own headache as the landlord. So those things needs to be clearly stated. You need to ensure that you state it. And to be very honest, you have to push it from the point of objectivity, because one thing I've also discovered in Africa, or let me say Nigeria, is the fact that we always get all overly emotional when something gets to the point of documentation, which is what I think is the difference between ourselves and the Western world. Those ones are very detailed, not because they are being Shylock or overly finicky, but because they want things to be expressly stated so that we all understand what are obligations, what are do's and don'ts, what are my own commitments, what's your own commitment. So agreement should be as detailed as possible. And I'm always proud to say it. I don't always give anybody an agreement that's less than 8 pages. It's as comprehensive as that. You may say, this lawyer, what is, I say, I need everything to be clear, so that tomorrow we all know what is going on. You understand me, I understand you. Because it's when I have it on ground, you signed off on it, that when we get to the point of disagreement, I don't want to be talking too much. I always make reference to what we sign off on, which I think should be the basis. So for me, do your due diligence as a tenant, do your due diligence as a landlord. I represent most times landlord. And let me be very honest, I do due diligence up to the point of calling your place of work to give that comfort in terms of who exactly you are. Are you bankable? Are you someone that is reliable? What level of integrity do you have? Because as much as possible, for my clients, we want to be accountable for who you are, particularly to the estate management. So it's as detailed as that. And as a tenant, look out for the kind of landlords that you have. We've seen landlords who would give their tenant all sorts. I've seen landlord give tenant some moratorium during COVID. It's about understanding. And we've seen landlords who make life hell for their tenants. So do your due diligence on both sides. Then your agreement, as much as possible, should be detailed. Let us make it clear who takes what, who does what, who take responsibility for this and all of that. So for me, that's just the simple way around it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barrister Tope. We are very, very grateful. That was very short and insightful. If you have questions, so for those that filled the Google form, we created a space for you to ask the questions. I believe that in the course of the presentation from various speakers, some of those questions have been addressed. However, if you feel like your questions have not yet, been addressed, this is the time to ask the question. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to type your question in the chat. Chat your question in the chat box. Or if you want to ask the question, you can just raise your hand and then we get to respond to you. So let's do that very, very quickly. If you have questions based off what you've heard, we've heard the snag inspector, we've heard the property investment perspective, we've heard the legal considerations and all of that. So let's take questions. And okay, we have one question already, and this question is to Barrister Tope. He said, how much is the agreement preparation fee? So I don't think he would want to communicate this here, but let's hear him.
No. I want to respond to it.
Yes,
so
sir.
I say this because as much as possible, one of the problems we have with the property market in Nigeria is transparency. If you want to buy into, for example, if you are going to United Arab Emirates, you want to pay, you already know what you want to pay. This thing, you see it every day in TikTok, in Facebook, so you know all of these things. But for example, in Nigeria, everything is literally shrouded in secrecy. But so let me start by saying that for lawyers, I will speak for lawyers, there's always there's always so we recently have a legal practitioners remuneration order, which was a framework from lawyers which to define what exactly lawyers should earn. So which defines what lawyers should earn on property transaction. So what that order has done is to create band. So we now have, so even in the legal profession, we now have states in Nigeria that are band A, states in Nigeria that are band B, and states in Nigeria that are band C. Many lawyers will not want to tell you. So as a lawyer in band A states like Lagos, there is a way that you can charge on properties, and it's dependent on the amount of consideration, which is the rent. So it's not cast in stone. Some lawyers will tell you, oh, 10%. Some lawyers will tell you 5% because of maybe the consideration is quite much, but it's not cast in stone. Let me be very clear about that. The order has created the ways of calculating it. If, for example, the rent is 20 million and above, maybe the first 5 million or first 20. So, for example, if the rent is 50 million, I'm just using it as an example. The first 20 million, maybe you charge a certain percentage, then every subsequent 10 million, this is what you charge. So it's basically what that order has come to regulate. And why it came to do that was because of the fact that agents were actually making some incursion into what should be the exclusive reserve of lawyers. You see agents coming in to actually take legal fees, and they will get one roadside lawyer to prepare the agreement for them. In fact, I almost fell victim. One of the properties I managed, the agent was actually charging 20% of the rent, while me, the lawyer, who is the owner and in charge of the property, all I charged was 10%. So I got so annoyed, and when they saw the handwriting on the wall, I really castigated them, because I was like, you can't, this is not your forte. As much as possible, we understand where we should operate. So let me state that in terms of what we presently have, there is a framework in place on what is to be charged. But let me be very honest with you. One thing I will always insist on as a tenant is to ensure that your agreement is detailed. And for you to have such detailed agreement, you need to get a lawyer who also is very experienced. And that comes at a premium. Let me be very clear. It comes at a premium. If you are paying, so for example, you are paying a rent that is quite higher, I expect you to also get a lawyer who would charge something reasonably, not as if it's luxury, but relatively premium. So let me use that. So it's not cast in stone, and don't be carried away. Some lawyers can then decide by their own to say, oh, it's 10%, it's 5%, and all of that. But it's not relatively cast in stone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate how detailed that is. Actually, there's a follow-up question for that. I don't know if you can just respond in like 2 sentences. Is asking, are we meant to do agreements yearly?
Agreement is meant to be once you are coming in. I know some Shylock and terrible landlords do that, all of those things, but agreement is to be once you come into that apartment.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Someone mentioned earlier that while you spoke, someone mentioned that we should share the slides with him. So I'm here saying that this recording is going to be on our YouTube page. So once it's up, we will let you know via our social media platform, and you can always go and watch. And then, of course, the link to this particular slide would also be communicated to you. So while we wait for further questions, I want to believe that we've responded to virtually every question that was sent to us. For us not to get questions now, that means we've done a great deal in responding to those questions. I'm going to have Ms. Motunrayo come up now. She's basically just going to, give general comments and then wrap up for us, hopefully. Ma'am, over to you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Please let me know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, ma'am.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you all for doing justice to this topic. I believe everything has been shared. Actually, I was just letting Snag Inspector One know that majority of all that we need to know has been shared. I will just touch on a few things that I think that have been mentioned that we need to just take home. Our lawyer mentioned the tenancy agreement. Please and please don't be in a hurry to return your tenancy agreement to your landlord. You know, some landlords will say, sign it immediately before they hand over your keys to you. Please don't. If you have a lawyer, if you have a friend, if you can reach out to a legal practitioner, have them review it for you for at least 1 to 2 days. Let your landlord know that, a lot of landlords like to put tenants under duress. You need to give us, because they know what they have written inside. There are certain clauses that you may not understand, but your lawyer would understand it. So you need to do such. So I will give an example. I know of someone that rented a property and she was made to return the tenancy agreement immediately. Unknown to her that she couldn't use any external technicians for her property. So anybody she has to use when she wants to fix the property has to come from the landlord. And she didn't know that was part of the clause in the agreement. She just signed and returned it. And then some few days, weeks, months after, she needed to fix her kitchen cabinet, need to paint, do a couple of, regular things in the apartment. And she brought in her technicians and they were walked out of the compound because she had signed and there was really nothing she could do. The technicians brought in by the landlord charged ×2 of what our own technicians charged. But she couldn't do anything, she had to pay. And they did shoddy jobs. In fact, some of them had to give them, when someone that's supposed to fix your cabinet is telling you, I have a lot of work this week, I can only come next week. And you cannot do anything about it because you are signed. So please let your lawyer, if it's a friend, somebody that's very best a practitioner, that's just the best. Get somebody that has experience in this, study this, and is currently in that field to look at your agreement up, top to bottom, scatter it and bring it back together, explain everything to you so that you don't fall into situations like this. Another thing, I know Snag Inspector mentioned network signal. I am actually experiencing this in my apartment. I didn't do a speed test or a network test when I wanted to take this apartment. So things changed and myself and hubby had to work remotely. And then that was when we understood that, hey, voila, when the signal is top notch in your room and in your bathroom is low, in your living room, you can barely see anything. And so that kind of situation had to make us buy 5G router. We wouldn't have needed if the 4G signal was fine. Anyway, so always get speed test apps. You can just do a search on Google speed test, use your different networks to check what is the speed test. Do it concurrently, like several times when you visit the apartment to know if another thing you can download is there's an app on iOS store that I came across recently that shows you where your internet transmitters, I think they call them these long antennas that we see. I'm trying to, the masts, yes. The closest one to your neighborhood will also determine how the signal within that area would be. If you can see a lot. So when I did that, I realized that the closest one was on Third Mainland and was a bit farther from here, and the other one was around Magodo. So that's why we were having the network issues, apart from the fact that also some other things that asbestos was used. So things like that. So you need to be sure that this is not an issue, especially if you're a remote worker. Another experience I like to comment on is the water issue. I experienced this. I lived at Owura at some point and I experienced the saltwater experience. All my utensils, my plate racks, everything, they all got destroyed because of the salt. So you need to be sure, apart from the water being hard or anything, you also need to be sure that the salinity in that area, especially if it's an area prone to close to the lagoon, you need to be sure that the water treatment takes care of that. If there is any, if there's no water, that's one thing I think nobody should negotiate in present in Nigeria. If there's no water treatment in the apartment, like if there's no water treatment in the building generally, you should try to get one. But if you have an opportunity to get an apartment where there's a water treatment plant, that's the best. And you need to be sure of the time, the periods where this is serviced and all of that. And you need to ask the tenants how things are being done in that. You can go in, like you were advised, under G and just find out, okay, how has been your experience? Water is something that's not negotiable in an apartment. So please don't joke with that. I've experienced it and I can tell you it wasn't funny. You can't use your water to cook. If you use your water to cook, you can't add too much salt, because I realized my food used to be salty. I did not know that the water was giving me extra salt until I eventually found out. So please, things like this, you should not joke with. I think another thing, verify your landlord. You have already been told that. I know of somebody that is experiencing this currently. She wasn't told that the landlord is very difficult. And on getting there, she found out that a lot of things were controlled. You know, when you have domineering landlords, a lot of things were controlled by the landlord. It's the landlord that pumps the water. It's the landlord that determines the time that everybody can come into the apartment. Once it's 11 o'clock, the landlord releases the dogs into the compound. So if you don't know about this and you're visiting them at night, you want to spend the night, you come into the apartment or they open the door, you might just encounter those dogs and they are security dogs. And you know, that permit me for using Yoruba, but things like that, maybe not experience it. So another thing I would like to touch on is please keep open lines of communication with your property manager or your landlord or whoever is representing your landlord at every point in time. Let them know the conditions of your apartment. Even if you're going to effect that repair, please let them know, because these are things that when a privacation inspection is being done, they may want to rope in to sort of not return your caution fees. Most times they don't return this in Nigeria, but it's not right. So any repair that you're going to undertake, let them know, so that if it's something, it is basically wear and tear, just let them have that information. Keep your documentations. Documentations are very key, because I have this experience, there are a lot of experiences in this field, or somebody that got an apartment and at the end of the day, it was left to return to Israel, something like that. The wiring that the landlord said he was going to fix wasn't fixed. The tiling was done halfway. The painting was not there. A lot of things were not there. You couldn't contact the landlord. You couldn't contact the property manager. And at the end of the day, he had to fix everything on his own. But what he did was, when he wanted to renew his rent, he deducted everything. And when the landlord came with bones at that point in time, why would you deduct my rent and all of that? You should have the documentation. This I paid for, this I paid for, this I paid for, this I did this. This is everything. My lawyer is aware. If you want to take this to court, let's go to court. At that point in time, the landlord knew that, oh, I have made a mistake and you just have to settle out of court. So please keep your documentations very, very, very important. Report maintenance issues promptly. Don't let them get to a point where it's no longer habitable and it begins to cause issues. So I think that's basically, and another thing, a lot of people feel like the rents and all of that, because of the way agents are behaving now, they are fixed in stone. No, they are not. Please negotiate when necessary. If you have certain things that you know that, for example, our lawyer gave an example of a situation where he was charging 10% and the agent was communicating 20%. So let them know that you know your rights. So that's another thing I'm coming to. Let them understand that you know your rights. If it's something seems too exorbitant, negotiate and request a familiarization meeting with the management team. That's another thing. If you want to take an apartment, don't just allow the agents be your only points of communication in that apartment. Request a familiarization meeting. Of course, this is at the point where you feel there are the necessary documents and all of that. Let them know that you want to discuss certain things and to be sure of your sanity and your the quality of the apartment you're getting. In this case, you'll be able to make certain discussions and let them know that, okay, you want to negotiate this. And when you hit a brick wall and you're unable to reach certain compromise, if you're not fine with it, you can always opt for another, but at least you've done your own necessary due diligence at this point. So I think the last thing is know your basic needs. When you're looking for an apartment, everybody wants luxury, but know your basic needs. If you are a young professional and you're just starting out life, what is your basic need? You need a place that's close to your workplace, proximity to the CBD. You need water. You need a place that has your desired amenities. Please work with that. It must have POP, the roof must be dancing, all of those things. They will come in their time. But work with your basic needs when you're looking for an apartment, so that in the long run, you can then begin to increase those needs as your disposable income also increases per time. That way, you would not get, what I ordered versus what I got. I think I have been able to touch on most things, but if there's any other thing, you could let me know in the comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Motunrayo. By the way, Mrs. Motunrayo is our estate survey partner. You heard when Mr. Funsho kept saying our HSP, so this is our estate survey partner. Thank you so much for that short yet insightful, details, basically. So we're just going to take some questions back to back. The first question for the lawyer, he says that, does that mean agency fee should not be more than 10%? I'm guessing this question is based off what you said about the percentage. So can you just quickly, in like 2 sentences, address that, Barrister Babatope?
So let me be clear. The word for the agent, it's an unregulated terrain. So that's why they move, quote and unquote, mad with what they charge. Some people on the island will tell you it's 10% because the rent is quite high. Those on the mainland will tell you they want to collect 2 years' rent. It's a forte that nobody seems or appears to regulate. Even the so-called Lagos State Real Estate Regulatory Authority has not provided sufficient comfort in that area. So I think for now, everybody is just doing as they want to. It's entirely at the discretion of everybody. They are doing anyhow. Let me use that word. But for lawyers, it's regularly regulated. So I can't say really that, this is what again, but definitely I know they need to be paid for their services. But what we are seeing at the moment is quite arbitrary. And it's because people are now doing it as a full-time job. Not even a full-time job, means of livelihood. So they are literally at the risk of ripping people off. They are trying to make money out of people. Unfortunately, there's nothing to really stop them. So all of us are stuck at the moment, except maybe we get government intervention maybe very soon by way of legislative intervention, telling them that this is what you should earn or what you should get as an agent. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. Yeah, so Better Limited, I can see your hand. I'll unmute you shortly. But I quickly want Mrs. Motunrayo to respond to this comment from Law Olu. Is this Law Olu or Laolu now? He said that the issue in Lagos is that, he said issues in Lagos, issue in Lagos is there is a scarcity mindset in real estate. So you go view an apartment, but before you do your due diligence, another person has paid and packed in. So what's your counsel in this regard, Mrs. Motunrayo? Because usually this is what happens, and that's why people usually just rush to make payments and don't give time to do due diligence.
Okay, thank you. I was actually the one raising my hand. I wanted to comment on the previous question. There's actually a scale of professional charges for real estate transactions, be it rental, sales, development, whatever it is. But because we have a lot of, like Mr. Babatope said, quacks in this space, that is, we don't have a lot of professionals out there speaking out. We have more of the quacks on the street. Your brother, your friend, anybody can be an agent these days. So it's more of what the landlord wants, what I want, I can convince the landlord. So if you're not ready to pay, please move on. That's one of the reasons we're having this issue of 20%, 2 years rent, 3 years rent. It's not supposed to be so. do your best to find I would say professionals in the space. Do your best. I always advise people that if you know of companies in the real estate space that are registered and certified by NICE and all of that. If you're looking for a property, check out those companies first. If they don't have, then you can then look for your brother on the street and all of that. But chances are those people will even do you better. They can call some of those agents to order if need be. And in some cases, if the agents are the ones with the upper hand, they can mitigate and mediate on such issues. But do your best to find. Sorry about that. Do your best to find professionals in this space first to get properties from before you then move to my uncle and my auntie. For the second question, the scarcity is actually real. There's housing deficit when it comes to certain types of apartments in this our home state in Lagos State. However, what I always advise people is give yourself a timeline when you want to rent an apartment. Don't let it not be when your landlord has sent you a 6 month quick notice that 6 months it's fine actually, or maybe when your landlord has told you your 6 months has expired, or you have left is 7 days, that's when you start looking for your next apartment. You're going to make decisions out of desperation that you may eventually regret. So give yourself a timeline when you want to move out of your apartment. So say you're moving out in December, start your search from June, July, so that even if you have situations where somebody pays and all of that, you can always get other options that would fit. In this way, you are not under pressure. You can do the necessary inspection. You can get second opinions. At the end of the day, you can eventually get good apartments. That's my own go-to advice. Don't rush. Do your best not to rush. I know certain situations will mandate that, but do your best not to rush. And if you have to rush, let a professional handle it for you. That way, they can take your full brief, everything that you need everything that you need, your basic needs, and they can work with that. Agents on the street will just tell you something opened up, please come and check it. But a professional will check, does it conform with your need for peace and tranquility? Does it conform with access to basic amenities? Does it conform to proximity to major roads? Things like that, entertainment, sports. These are things that professionals would look at. They will definitely have a checklist they would use when they're searching for apartments for you. So if you have to be in a hurry, please, if don't think of the stress it will take you and all of that. Use a professional, and if you can, please let there be a timeline that you can work with, so that we don't have stories that we hear today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you so much, Ma. That was beautiful. The snag inspector will respond to this final question. There's a question here that says that what's the cause of rust on plumbing equipment like the Hangu valve, shower hose, kitchen taps, etc. And how could this be fixed? Okay, so snag inspector, please can you address this question very quickly? Snag inspector 1.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to our guests for joining us, and well done, everyone. So to answer very quickly, it's the action of corrosion on those things from the water that you have. So if your water is highly alkaline or highly acidic, it can actually be highly alkaline and acidic, but that's rare. What is more possible is highly acidic, high in calcium in particular. So if it is high in calcium from groundwater, if your groundwater is high in calcium, it reacts with your water, with your faucets, your pipes, and all of those things, and then it causes the coloration or discoloration or whatever it is, because it creates those who know chemistry can help me. There's the word they call it calcium ions or something like that. So it basically there's basically in simple English a chemical reaction because of the content of your water, and that's why we are also intent on finding a commercial we'll soon be releasing rather a commercial solution to some of these things, so that we can, because we've seen that there's no immediate solution to these problems, and so maybe you would need to then help people to have but as Trial said, if your Ms. Sorry, said, if your house doesn't have water purification, it's a big it should be a deal breaker for you if they don't have a water purification facility, because if you live in those areas that they specifically mentioned, Yanoworo, parts of Lekki, parts of Island and all of that, basically places that are along the river tributary of Ogun State, the River Ogun, River Oshun. I think there's another River Oshun or something that pours into the Lagos Atlantic and then the Lagos Lagoon. If you live along those places, at least 10 kilometers along those places, you would definitely have those experiences. So it's basically because, again, it's salt water. That's the second thing, salt water. So the salt attacking the metals. So salt, calcium, and all of that. That's what leads to that. And you can't stop it. You just have to purify the water, basically. Yeah, calcification. Thank you, Mrs. Tara. Calcification. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, so thank you so much, NAG Inspector. I sincerely apologize. This is going to be the last question we're going to respond to. So, NAG Inspector, there's a question here. Basically, just address this, because for me, I feel it's everything we've spoken about, but let me just assume that you're just joining in. So the person says that person is looking to start a family soon. I'm looking to rent an apartment around Ogudu GRA, Lagos, where I can start my family. Is there any other thing? Okay, any other thing I should be aware of? Sir, could you quickly respond to that, and then we call it a day?
Well, for Ogudu, my only personal concern would be the size of the compound, because it's a family house. So, I mean, you basically need Ogudu GRA, old Ogudu GRA. I think it's phase 1, they call that, the one on the right. I've forgotten, there's one they call is it Hallelujah or something? They have one, or Redemption Way or something like that. There's the first one that they still have the big compounds, and then there's the newer one that has the tiny compounds. So I would generally advise you stay in the place that has the bigger compounds. I'm trying to remember the names. Maybe it's phase 1 or phase 2, but basically the size of your compound. But Ogudu is one of the areas that is basically okay. Generally, you have fairly good water, you have fairly good security and access control. The 2 phases, that's the parts down the road, those parts are actually good in terms of security and accessibility from either the Third Mainland Bridge or. So I think Ogudu is one of the ideal places, generally speaking. And in fact, with our cooperative, it's one of the places we're actually working towards. But again, it depends on which of them. There's one of them that has those more modern compounds that are really tiny. So for a family, I personally won't agree. But again, like we've said, our expectations should match reality. I'd like Mrs. Toya to also to wrap that up for us, and you would actually like you to consult her. Would actually reach out to you actually and give you some more details on this after the call. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Like Snag Inspector one has said, Ogudu GRA is actually great. But then one thing you need to know about Ogudu GRA is about 3 to 4 years back, they incorporated some additional streets into Ogudu GRA that were not initially the Ogudu GRA that we used to know. So Ramat Crescent, some other axes on the right-hand side, if you're coming in from Third Mainland into Ogudu, you would notice some new gates. They're fairly new, and they had Ogudu GRA, blah, 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 all of that. So what I would advise is the starting of the exact location, because why I'm saying this is, one, some of those newly incorporated areas have issues with water pressure, and the type of water. So you need to be certain of that. If possible, speak to the old Ogudu GRA. That's the one you have all the way to before Ramat Crescent. There's also before Domino's. So you need, if you can stick to that axis, I think that's fine. Security is great there. Internet is fine. I think every other thing is fine for that axis. It's quiet and it's also very peaceful. Just the water issues is what I know that I've had a bit of complaints about in that axis. And I think that's basically, and the compound thing, Mr. Testimony also mentioned, look for one of the old but nice houses, or even if it's the newly built one, let it be something that offers enough play area, entertainment area for your children, at least if you've already started one. But if you're looking to start one, we can always work with that. Thank you. I think that's everything I would say. On that area, we can still talk more later. Reach out to Snag Inspector. That's Miss. Reach out to Miss Bridget and we can take the conversation further. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I sent you a response I'm trying to get the name of the person that asked the question, but yeah, I've sent a response. I've dropped our contacts. Either send me a WhatsApp message, or you could just call me directly, and then we'll have further conversations in that light. Yeah, it's been such an insightful conversation. I was extremely educated myself, right? I was extremely educated myself. So we're wrapping up now. A few notices. First of all, if you are not following the Snag Inspector on Instagram, on Facebook, LinkedIn, yes, we're on LinkedIn, on Twitter, all of our social media platforms, please do well to follow us. You know for sure that we are giving you, we are educating you, and we're giving you information that pertains to your livelihood. So please do well. That's the little token you can do for us. Please follow us. Also, as regards the property investment that we spoke about rather by Mr. Funshaw did a little bit in that regard. A link was dropped here. Please follow our Instagram page in that light to get more information as regards the property investment. Thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you, Barrister Babatope. Thank you, Mrs. Moturayo. Thank you, Snag Inspector 1, Snag Inspector 2, Mr. Funshaw Akinsoya. And yeah, thank you to me. And above all, thank you to everybody that joined in. We're going to send you emails. We're going to reach out to you via your mails. We're going to send the link to this slide to you. We're going to update a few things, and then we'll send the link to you. We'll most likely get across to you via SMS too, but I'm saying most likely consciously. So if you have further questions, do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can send us messages in our DMs. Of course, it was from the messages we got from our DMs that made us come up with this webinar. We kept getting questions as regards what are the things to look out for when you want to rent apartments in your city. And that's why we have come up with this webinar. So if there are other matters you want us to address, that you want us to, talk about, we are open. Basically, Snag Inspector is here to make life easy for you. So having said that, thank you so much, everybody, once again for joining in. We're grateful. We hope you have an amazing weekend. So we're going to end right about now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you very much. God bless.